presenting episode 1 of the Grateful Music Radio Hour. For our inaugural episode, we're dusting off a previously unreleased interview with Rick and Peter of Goose by our very own JGregory, conducted backstage at the Madison Theater in Covington, Kentucky, after Goose opened for Tauk on May 10, 2019. The conversation ranged from the songwriting process to Game of Thrones, to the band's origins, to how a Kentucky suburb of Cincinnati became the Connecticut quartet's home away from home. We've locked this interview away and labeled it for use in case of global pandemic only. And hot damn, here we are. Enjoy.
Some of the questions I had just from kind of diving into the music for the last couple days. And so just talk a little bit, if y'all would, about some of your musical influences, and maybe we'll kind of round back out to like your sound today.
Sure. I mean, we all have different musical influences as, you know, individually, but we kind of figured out there was a I'm trying to remember it, threefold kind of like main breakdown of influence as far as the band goes, I think, as far as, you know, what you can trace back in the music of the band. Do you remember the order?
Well, the first one was like, you know, like the Grateful Dead.
You're right.
And
the
Fish.
jam bands.
The jam bands.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Naturally. It's kind of the most obvious.
Right. Most obvious for sure. I think the next one
Fish.
was like
Medeski, Martin, Woods, Schofield.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of jazz. I mean, Ben's heavily influenced by a lot of jazz fusion players and stuff like that.
Ben's the drummer?
Ben's the drummer. Ben and I met at Berkeley, and like at that time we were, you know, very much into that kind of stuff. Schofield was a huge influence of mine, and then like older stuff like Wes Montgomery and you know, he's not older, but Pat Metheny and all those guys, you know, guitar players and stuff. Old jazz and Bill Evans. There's just like a lot of cool old jazz. So the you know, more complex instrumental side of things. Then the third category, I guess, you know, from a writing perspective, is a lot more modern. It's like a lot of music that I didn't get into until more recently. Bands like Fleet Foxes, Vampire Weekend is a band that we both really like.
Yeah.
Bon Iver is these guys, like, it's kind of a joke at this point how obsessed I am with that shit.
I lived 1 year in Wisconsin.
What's that?
I lived 1 year in northern Wisconsin about
really?
10 years ago, and those people were fucking love Bon Iver, man.
Dude's an animal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of stuff. That's really, you know, some songwriters from like Colorado, Gregory Alan Isaacoff. That's the kind of stuff that I listen to the most these days.
Cool.
So it's some blend between all of that, I guess.
So you have some like classical music training then, I guess?
More so jazz.
Okay.
I studied classical composition at school a little bit, like classical counterpoint and stuff like that. But I have more training in jazz, I'd say, than classical. But yeah.
Awesome. So, you know, it's funny that you said Berkeley, because one thought I have had and had again today is, it seems like this genre I would almost call like professional jam band. Right? You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like somebody mathematically was like, if you just find the perfect combination of, you know, all of modern music and like, you know, here it is. You ever have that thought, you know, about like what your place is and this new breed of jam bands? Like, have you ever had thoughts about where you kind of fit in that?
I have.
That's an interesting question.
It's something that, like, I feel like, you know, having thoughts, like spending time thinking about things like that is, I kind of think is, you know, ultimately not a good thing to do.
Right.
Because I think the only way for you to do something real is to just like do it honestly, like what you want to hear, you know, what you want to do, what you're hearing, instead of trying to like place yourself in some kind of context of what's going on around you, you know.
Sure.
But at the same time, yeah, It's like, I think we all think a lot. I definitely think a lot. And I guess if I were to get specific on that, there's a lot of song, like we were talking about before, that third category is a ton of like songwriting and stuff like that is, I think, emotionally goes a little bit beyond the scope of what the Dead were different. They took it a lot of places, and Fish gets really epic in their way, but it's not the same kind of like emotional. It's a different emotional depth than a lot of this other stuff. So the fact that that is stuff that I'm personally very moved by, and he's super into a lot of really cool pop music and stuff too. Mm-hmm. So if hopefully there's some natural blend that occurs based on, but like I said, ultimately you have to do with what you're feeling.
Right.
You have to go for what you're feeling, otherwise it's going to be forced or not real.
Sure. So talking about the natural blend, then obviously your songs, much of them are well compositioned and all that. So is there ever thought to like purposefully blend genres and say like, what would take the song to like another level is like, what if we just threw like a reggae rhythm like right in the middle of this, and kind of like that would kind of add another, like, is there that thought process that goes into it at all on a songwriting perspective, or is it more just
I think
what comes?
It's kind of similar to what we were just talking about. Like I think the key is kind of keeping an open mind and like open heart almost when you're working on music, in a way that instead of like, I think if you're having the thought of let's try to combine these things, like unless it's driven by an underlying feeling, like an underlying like draw to that combination of things, I feel like it's more times than not it's going to come out contrived. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So like when you're doing these things, it's really the same thing. It's if it's natural, it's got to be natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got to just happen.
Sure.
Otherwise, I think more times than not, it's not going to come across like real.
This is a question I always think of when I think of compositional jams. Is like, where does it come from then? Like, if it's natural, and I believe it is, like when is it natural?
There's a lot of different layers. There's a lot of like different ways things happen. Like a lot of the way that, as far as jams go, they like often take shape and change shape over time playing shows, mm-hmm. and practice. Things happen at practice. Like at practice, you kind of are a little less, concerned with putting on a show sometimes, so you can kind of relax a little bit more and screw around a little more. And sometimes really interesting things come out of that, and we're like, okay, and then you can utilize some tools that we've developed to like turn it into a more, organized thing in some way, But as far as like core, like raw songwriting and stuff like that, like I'm personally super introverted, so I kind of get inspired and you get a lot of ideas after spending more time like alone, particularly in nature. It's kind of where I start to open up and get the raw ideas. I don't know. What about you? It seems like it's a little different for you.
I would say so. I mean, like a lot of like the songs I've written, I've just been like kind of hanging out at home, and I'll it's like kind of random. Sometimes I'll just like get an idea and I'll like get on my laptop, like I record stuff as I write, so I'll end up with like a demo at the end, and it's worked like naturally like that for me for like a couple of years now, just in terms of like it, it's like a process that it's really fun to have like something at the end of it, mm-hmm. That I'm really proud of and I feel like stoked on. That's like a great process that I really like to do in terms of songwriting, and a lot of that happens just by like I'm practicing like guitar or piano, and I'll just like happen upon something that I really like, and I'll either have time to just go for it right then, or I'll have to like record it on a voice memo and then just like pick it up at another time.
Sure.
How often do you like go, like, when you do that, when you record the seed, how often do you go back and actually finish it?
Sometimes. It really depends, because like there was actually a song that I had recorded like 6 months earlier than I actually like went in and got into it. It's an interesting process, and sometimes like, I mean, honestly, like the the percentage of voice memos that turn into songs is probably like 5% or lower.
Right.
But that's only because I feel like I don't even have like, maybe they could all be songs, but I don't have the time necessarily.
It's a time thing.
It's totally a time thing.
They could all
We're
be
always on the
songs.
road. We're always playing and practicing and working on. We have like recordings coming out soon that we've been working on a lot. So it's like, it's totally a time thing. But there's like, the process is so fun, and when I get to do it, it's a blast. And then bringing the stuff to the band has been really cool for me because I just joined the band like a year and a half ago.
Really?
Yeah, and we're doing like 3 of my songs that are like newer, and then a couple that I had like been playing with my older band, and just bringing them to Goose is like kind of cool to see how everybody interprets the song,
Right.
and how it turns out live is really fun. Doing jams and stuff like that off the tunes.
Yeah.
It's totally different than anything I did with my other band or anything I could imagine just sitting by myself writing the song. So
Sure.
yeah, it's a cool process.
Yeah. Awesome. So you guys have a second album in the works?
We're gonna do albums right now.
Oh,
yeah,
all
sorry.
right.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's been a long journey. We've been working on it for a long time, but there's kind of basically the elements of 2 albums that we're kind of working on sort of simultaneously.
Right on. So, and that's basically the process then, is like, you all have like these songs that you've kind of developed a little bit on your own, and you just take it to the band and see what happens.
They're both
direct it,
different.
mold it.
They're both one in particular is pretty interesting because it's kind of like we were talking about it yesterday or the day before actually, because I kind of had this little like mini realization yesterday that it is sort of this like conglomeration of this whole so the 4 of us grew up in the same town in Connecticut, Wilton, Connecticut. Trevor and I have been playing together for a long time, and we were in a couple different bands together kind of, and just did a bunch of jamming, but one band in particular kind of made a go of it, and there was Vasudo.
Yeah.
That band was called. So there's a lot of music that we worked on in that time frame that some of which that we've brought back and kind of revitalized and updated with Goose. So we're kind of drawing on that history. Like Peter said, he's got some songs from his old band that we're playing now. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like it's a cool album in that it's just drawing from a lot of different places of our history, from mainly like it's kind of got a pretty Wilton, Connecticut feel to me personally, because of it's all coming, these songs are coming from that area in a sense.
It's a music metropolis, man.
Hello. What's that?
It's like best of Wilton CT.
Yeah.
2020.
So yeah, we're pretty excited about that one.
Cool.
It's gonna be fun. The other one is was stuff that we've actually had for a long time. We've kind of done some recording with it for a while, and long time. He's laughing because he actually called it like 3 years ago.
Yeah. That would be like Goosemas 5 or 6.
Right.
What you lined up doing.
Yeah. We just we recorded some stuff, and then like we kept kind of re-recording stuff, and
Sure.
band kept kind of changing and evolving and growing, which is a good thing. It was just every time we'd record something and then go through a change and like go through a growth in some way, be like, we got to do it again.
Right.
So yeah, there's a whole theme and an idea behind that album as well. So that's something that we're gonna bite down on.
Sure. Yeah, I would imagine that would be a hard, especially since you guys are fairly young in the sense that you've been in the band a short amount of time.
Right.
That you would be like, all right, this is the recording, like this is it, and then like the next time you play it live, some jam happens, and you're like, that needs to be on the album,
Yeah. At a certain point, you have to accept that it's just a snapshot.
Right.
It's a photograph of a time, and
Good way to put it.
yeah. And it's kind of cool that way too. If you're a live band that kind of bases a lot around your touring, a song being a certain way on a record and being performed completely differently is like a totally okay thing,
Sure.
in my opinion. You know, it's kind of cool that if you're playing these songs all the time, then and then you put out a record with the, you know, songs that people are familiar with. There's, you know, why not have them sound a different way, whatever way you want to hear them, you know, given that you can do a lot with recording that you can't do live, you know. A lot of layering and all kinds of stuff.
Tonight there's an example of two parts of growth that have developed over time with this guy and these guys. Is what ended the show, the lead right there, came from jive, and Slow Ready is just a slower tempoed version of one of their songs that they were messing around jamming in the practice one time, and Ben just played a little slower beat, and they're like, all of a sudden one day I was like, what are you guys playing? It sounds awesome, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I can see how they evolve all the time, and it kind of carries with the music. It's really awesome, and from a fan perspective, to hear it one way in a record and see it live is so cool.
Absolutely. So on that note, you know, how much is affected, you know, so these songs come out differently when you play them live different times. How much of that is affected by, like, you're on, like, opening for Tauk versus maybe playing your own show, or like headlining, or maybe you're at a festival during the day or a festival at night? And
we definitely think about that stuff.
Yeah.
Play that room, baby.
Yeah.
It's definitely one thing that I have appreciated about this band, is that I feel like we could be playing like at 12 p.m. like beach show, or a 3 a.m. like, you know, late night show at, you know, Camp Bisco or something.
Sure.
You know, like there's so many different songs and vibes that we can kind of create, and that we've like learned to just, you know, like live with the moment. And it's been cool to be able to like play all these different scenarios and actually like have good feedback at each one.
Right.
You know.
Sure.
Won't you stay with me forever? Sadie, won't you stay? Won't you stay? Girl, Sadie, won't you stay with me forever? So won't you stay?
So, you know, I had this thought of, like, when we're talking about like this professional jam band idea, and it's like, you know, I feel like this is somewhat of a product of the digital age, you know, of like, we're the first generation, more or less. So we're kind of on the back end of it, where we grew up being able to do and listen to like whatever we wanted any time, and like how, like, yeah, exactly, you know, LimeWire and that shit. And it's like, that's something that we probably all take for granted, that certainly never happened before I was like a teenager, you know, where it's like any music I want to hear, I can just hear it, you know.
Right.
And like, yeah, does that, I wonder how much that comes into like the modern jam scene of like, you know, the funk and pop and and the jam and the dead and the jazz and like all that stuff, and like how, like whether that's been bred
It's
with,
I
with
think
our age group, you know.
I think that idea expands way beyond the jam scene. I think it's kind of happening everywhere in music now, and it's 100% because of the internet. When you think about it, because everyone's listening to everything, or can listen to anything, and you know, therefore, people's influences, people's ideas, their ears, and their, you know, creativity is being opened up and like kind of directed in all these different ways. I think like more than ever, genres are just out the window, you know. Yeah, you guys describe your music, it's there's most people, unless people decide that like are really passionate about one thing and just want to do that thing, which is cool, you know, like a roots reggae band, or I don't know, whatever, you know, something. What's that band from California that's really
that was at the UVA Fest? That Tom?
No. It's the really cool, like
Slightly Stupid,
like swing-ish band.
California Honey Drops.
Yes, the Honey Drops. Like that's kind of an example of a band that they're awesome, incredible musician, great band, and they play like music that just feels great, but it's very much like a thing, and they kind of stick to it, and it's awesome. But I'd say more times than not, you know, right now in any genre, in any place, there's things being pulled from all kinds of places, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The jam scene is like, you know, maybe even more so because of it's kind of been the MO from the get-go, right? The Dead did a lot of different things. Fish did even more different things, you know? So it's kind of like every jam band ever is like, we do this, this, and this, and this, and this, you know? So it's kind of like part of the thing. Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of comes back to the conversation, you know, what we were talking about before is, you know, are you, if you're doing it to do it, or if you're doing it because, you know, the song like wants to do it, or, you know, it's just happening naturally or something like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna have a lot to do with like how we release music as well.
Sure.
You know, just the fact that like people are so like, oh, there's a thing, and then like, oh wait, there's another thing. Like you just the scrolling nature,
Right.
like basically makes you have to be like way more, you know, on it with like the way you release music, and you just have to. We got some strategies in the works. So I think. Yeah. Well, yeah. You know, we just, you know, it's just a.
That's funny. I never really thought, you know, like social media optimization or whatever, and how that could go deeper
It's like
than
half
posting.
the
But
battle.
yeah,
I mean, nowadays it's
Right.
like people. You had a show, great. They want to see that, you know, which all your tours and set lists and see pictures. I feel like a couple years ago we thought this. It was almost more. Sure, touring is huge, but honestly, just having content out there and having people go to your page and see, oh, they're playing West Virginia, here, and here. It's kind of almost more important nowadays to also have a great sound, but have as much digital release as you can.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tricky balance though, because it's almost like it's so fast and immediate and constant, you know, that whole thing. If you kind of like adapt solely to that, if you only do that, I feel like you're missing out on telling a different kind of story, a slower story, you know what I mean, a bigger story almost.
Yeah.
It may sound kind of weird, but you know, like in the days of you know, the Dead, really, they, you know, people would make a record, and you know, people would wait until it was released, and then they'd go and like stand in line at the record store if it was super popular, or they would just go to the record store and get it. They'd go home and like smoke some bongs and sit around and just listen to it, and like that really gave a lot of emphasis to what you can do with an album. People listen to music in like the medium of an album, as opposed to now it's hard to do that, you know. It's hard to I don't think people consume music for the most part in the same way as much. It's a lot.
Absolutely.
Generally speaking, it's a lot more. You know, if you don't captivate in the first 30 seconds, then
Next
you're probably
thing,
gonna
next.
move on to the next
Or
thing.
like you made like one
Right.
song from an album and only listen to that one.
Right.
and,
Right.
You know.
So, you know, thinking about telling slower stories amidst, you know, staying, I guess, relevant, or, you know, I don't love that word, but you know, appealing to the faster paced thing at the same time.
Right. Absolutely.
It's, you know, something I guess we're striving for.
And I think about like talking to my dad, and he could be like, I remember when like the first time I heard American Beauty was in such and such's basement, man.
Right,
You just
totally.
you know, and it's like, I don't know that I have a whole lot of those thoughts because of the way we consume. It goes to like TV too, and I'm just rambling now, but like, you know, maybe Game of Thrones is like the latest and potentially the last time where you can like, something comes on and you can go to work on Monday and everybody's like, fucking Game of Thrones, right? Like, you know, and like you talk, because like now it's just like you just watch shit whenever and things just you know what I mean?
It's
It's like
like
seasons, like you watch the whole thing.
Right.
Draw a comparison between that immediate, you know, the fast paced thing versus the slow paced thing. I would completely accredit to like the degree to which it's like a phenomenon right now.
Right.
To the
100%.
fact that dude hung out for God knows how long, how many years, thinking about this story, writing those books, right? So the books are a thing, he spent a ridiculous amount of time probably crafting that story and thinking about it. And then it caught on. Some, you know, the producers, it was the HBO producers, they caught it and turned it into a show. And, you know, when the show started, he was like, there's, you know, if the show catches up to as far as I've gone, then that's gonna be, you know, whack, basically. Right. And he didn't use that word, but point. And it totally did. It caught right up to him, and now these other books gone on. It's just kind of like, using that as a comparison, or it's very much the same thing. Because I mean, between that slow-paced thing and the fast-paced, like modern current thing, it's kind of like the modern thing is just completely overrun the story that he was crafting, and that the story that he was crafting in the slow pace is what has ultimately captivated all these people.
Yeah. Right. We kind of tie that back in then to what we were talking about and how this process works for you all. I think about my wife, and she doesn't really like fantasy shows, but I was able to get, and I do, and I was able to get her into Game of Thrones because it skirts that line between, like, it's magic, but most of this is like about real world interaction and people. Yeah, they've cut out a lot of the more magical stuff from the books because they want the TV show to have that mass appeal. And so then going back to your songwriting, is that ever a thought?
Those thoughts are unavoidable to a certain extent, but they're really dangerous. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think it's kind of like a theme of the conversation here, but if the more thoughts you have like that, and the more importantly, the more you act on them, the more you're really what's the word I'm looking for? You're compromising your shit.
Right.
You're in extreme danger of compromising your shit if you're thinking too much about what people want, if they're not going to like something, and like to claim that we're not guilty of it would be
bullshit.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
right.
Yeah. But it's something you got to keep
There's just like some songs that we wouldn't play in this situation.
Oh
right.
Yeah.
And it's
100%.
it's just because, like, you're playing the room.
Sure.
Every show is about playing to the room.
Does that thought ever change mid-set?
No,
You can totally go that way, yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
And there's been times where it went the other way, where we had planned to do something that and then we're just like, oh wait, we shouldn't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
It goes both ways.
Definitely ride the wave of a set. Definitely way more guilty of it live than in, there's only one record out right now, but we're working on
Right.
a lot more. And
records
I
are
think,
fair game.
take a lot more liberty on that front.
Sure.
I personally feel a lot more comfortable going different places and fully exploring them because, one, you have time to like fully flesh out the ideas and craft it more like a painting and see, try something out. If it doesn't work, you can sit there and be like, okay, this is not working. Like how, what do we do to change it to, so it will work. Or if it won't work, then you move on, do something else. But live, it's kind of like, the mood of whatever, the room or whatever's going on, it takes over.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, maybe we wanted to do this song, but, we're ready to cook right now, so let's cook,
Right.
Something like that.
Then, so like, what's in store last half of 2019, 2020? Any, other than maybe getting 1 or 2 records out, like what's the kind of pie in the sky goal that you're hoping for over the next year and a half?
Yeah, all right. Well, so one of the records, the one that has been in the works for like 3 years or 2 years, or like a long time, is our main goal, and my main goal for this year is to get that out. Like, I think I was just thinking that at the beginning of the year, like this is that year for that to happen.
December 30th, it's got to get out.
Yeah, like I'm feeling like, with all the work that's gone into it, it's time to make like a big push.
Right.
In addition to that, the other record is going to be a much more gradual kind of release. Like, there's going to be some music from that one coming out very soon.
Yeah.
And that is going to be, a big thing for us because we haven't put out anything in a few years. So getting a few tunes out, soon is going to be good. And that one's going to be, it's kind of cool how they're intertwining. But the coolest thing I think about this year is going to be all the music that's coming out from Goose in the studio. So
it's a really interesting duality, or it feels sort of like a duality, because it's like that what he was just talking about is kind of this whole aspect of what we've been working on, and the whole live thing is like this whole other animal. It's the other train that's just rolling all the time, and we're constantly just kind of like rolling with it. So that is just going to keep happening. so on that front, there's like a ton of festivals that are, or a few festivals this summer that are bigger than what we've done before. We're
Totally.
really excited about, and just a lot of cool stuff happening.
Which ones?
Peach Fest, Summer Camp.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, don't ask too.
Oh yeah, that's coming up, right?
Birds of a Feather.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's
it's
Birds of a Feather is right around here.
Yeah. Right here,
We're
yeah.
like, it's cool to be headlining a festival that's like not even close to your home state.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, you guys have taken
that's
off
a
in
new
this
thing for
region,
us.
like
Big way.
like we were talking about outside. It's
yeah,
for I wouldn't say whatever reason, and the reason it's good and people like it, but
Yeah.
for whatever reason, this is like an area where you guys have really taken off, which is cool.
Yeah, this was really the first time that in this town in particular, it was last year was the first time that we've seen that kind of response. Over the course of the year, like we played twice in February, right?
yeah.
Beginning and end of the run.
Right.
The Colorado.
Yeah. So we came here on the way out to Colorado on the way back, and just saw, like, between those two shows, saw a bunch of growth. A bunch more people came out, and from the very first one, there was a crew of people that are now good friends of ours, that just like listened to the stuff beforehand and were stoked, and we were like, all right, great. And then it kind of just grew from there throughout the course of how many times did we play here in 2018?
8 or something like
8
that.
times?
Man,
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
I heard like two people outside be like, I thought they were local to here.
I totally understand.
What to do if you take a tumble, if you take a spill, there's a lesson to learn and a cup to refill. Well,